All right. What's up, everyone? Um, Paul, would you explain what we're doing today?
We're doing a podcast.
Yes.
What kind of
Uh,
podcast?
yeah, so we're gonna kind of break away from just as something me and Paul could talk about while we're not watching movies. Just shit we find interesting in, I guess, like the topic of movies in general,
Well, it's
right?
fiction. It's narrative.
Right.
For
Yeah.
history, first. All right. Because we've been friends for how long? 7 years.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
gonna be
Pretty
seven.
long.
It's actually seven. Some because ironically, we went in English class.
Right. What was
Melchiodi,
that? Sophomore year?
junior year,
Junior year. Junior
and
year.
we started talking. I do forget how. I think it was February. We just kind of
Uh,
started. I did pick you out though. I kind of like this. You had the
you
hair.
could tell I was the fucking weirdo.
Not weird. I don't know if the
I'm
word
a
was
weirdo.
weirdo.
That's what
You're
I looked out
cool.
for. That's what I looked out for in high
The,
school.
the weirdo. Well, you found me, I
Yeah,
guess, and we
exactly.
started um February, I think. Uh, it's fun. I trying to remember exact details. It is a bit blurry, admittedly, but I do remember we hung out. It was the Regents. I promise for whoever's listening that this is relevant because our first conversations, including my first, I saw you in the park, and it's before the Regents, or I was waiting. I was something Regents involved,
Yeah. And if it
and
was me, it was probably something drug involved.
we were talking about LSD and acid and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But another topic,
I haven't changed at all, man.
no. But the other one of the topics is like Game of Thrones. Like we
Oh
talked about
yeah,
Game
yeah,
of
yeah.
Thrones. It was Breaking Bad too, I think.
Breaking
Um,
Bad. I was
Game of
definitely
Thrones.
probably trying to sell you on Game of Thrones.
I'm pretty sure.
Good thing
And
you
if
didn't. Honestly, good thing you didn't.
well, I read the book out loud. It's like a
Right.
5 minute read. Not
Well,
even a few weeks ago, but
I'm pretty sure one of the things on discussion was Tarantino, right? And Pulp Fiction in particular. I remember talking to you about Pulp Fiction, like, because I just remembered because we were talking about it like just a few minutes ago. I'm like, oh, yeah, we talked about it before, and I told
we
him I didn't
did.
watch it. Yeah.
Holy shit. That might have, yeah, maybe. Um, Trying to
Yeah.
think.
Where were you going with this?
I was going because our bond was solidified by that. Because we always would talk from then on. Like I remember talking about Game of
Yeah.
Thrones and like the DC movies, and
Comic books for
we saw
sure.
all the Marvel movies together.
Star
Not all of them.
Wars.
Star Wars.
Star Wars is a
We
thing.
saw. What did I see with you? I don't think we talked about Star Wars though.
Yeah.
We didn't see it together. We talked about it the year Force
No,
Awakens came out.
we saw Star Wars.
We saw Rise of Skywalker. We
Right.
didn't
Yeah, yeah,
see
yeah. No, we
we
also saw the one that's like the in-between movie.
Rogue One.
Yeah, Rogue One. Didn't we see
Did we
Rogue One?
see? We saw Ant-Man. We didn't see Rogue One.
Did we not? Because did we? I
We
remember the
talked
Darth
about it
Vader
though.
scene.
We talked about it, but we didn't see it
Okay, okay.
together.
Got you, got you.
But I remember you loving The Force Awakens. You felt like it
Yeah,
was a
no,
story
that
for your
was
new generation.
yeah, maybe
I
maybe I was
agree with you
wrong.
still by. No, I still agree with you. I think that's why it works for me, as it is.
I also like the prequels more, but that's whatever.
I fucking the prequel, yeah, the prequels. So now the listener here's my point.
Right. Yeah,
Because it's our bond is based on this shit.
it's true.
So but then because for context, I feel so pretty like I'm a writer. It's a very hard thing to say without coming off as like pretentious. I don't know why.
Fine, dude.
Uh
Like our whole like movie podcast show,
I keep
whatever,
saying
is
that
about
everyone
pretentiousness in
right.
film.
Well, right. So that is my perspective that I come from. Is like I'm someone who's trying to do this too.
Mhm.
And as I've been doing it, as I've been studying the craft more, and it's not just me, too. It's not just me studying. It's there's also as we talked about, we've bonded over this stuff. But lately, there does seem to be and it's sort of always been there, perhaps, but especially lately, um, there's an undercurrent that there's too much of this shit in movies today. It's
Too much
really
of what? So we haven't even said what. All right. So the
well, we
topic
kind of
of
did. We
discussion,
just
yeah, the topic of discussion today is pulp. Pulp
fiction,
stories, yeah,
Pulp
pulp
Fiction,
fiction, but not the fucking
not
Tarantino.
the movie. But Tarantino movie is relevant because that movie is a riff. Well, it is a riff on crime fiction.
Right. It's
The,
taking apart those
yeah,
stories.
he said that. The Tarantino quote is he said, "Look, you've seen this story. You've seen these stories 1,000 times.
Right.
So we're just trying to play." So he said something to that effect. I guess I could
Yeah.
look it up. Again, we're on the internet, but Pulp Fiction is an intentional, total play on,
The deconstruction, right?
which is weird because like I don't know how many people who love the movie are aware of that that's what it's really doing.
Yeah. I mean it's like it's gonna be hard to get that, without looking it up. Like,
Right, but it's still it's one of the most popular movies ever made, kind of. Yeah, it's like the go-to movie for what's your favorite movie of all time? Oh, Pulp Fiction. I feel like it's
we should
known
we
as
should
like
put that on the list.
of the goat.
Just I think I should rewatch it now that okay,
Yeah, I
so
haven't seen it in 6.5 years. So
so I'm sort of like a history nerd, and once Paul started talking about all this pulp stuff, I started looking into like the history of these pulp magazines. Um, and that kind of like maybe I'll have like a different view of what the movie was trying to do, from back when I saw it, which was probably like beginning of college, early high school, or some shit like that.
yeah, I saw it the last year of high school, and it just didn't
Right.
really, for reasons again, just for the sake of time, I won't get it. It just didn't. It didn't feel like. Here's why. It didn't feel like it was about it.
Right.
It felt like I was just watching a movie, and that's the most I can say.
Yeah.
But my opinion aside, again, the original title, uh, it was called Black Mask after the seminal hardboiled crime fiction magazine from the 1920s. Again, actual Pulp Fiction. And he said, taking all the old crime stories. Here's a direct quote. The idea was basically to take like the chestnuts of all the old chestnuts that you've seen in all these movies, all the stories in the book. The guys go out with the guy has to go out with the big man's wife, can't touch her.
Right.
The boxer, you've seen it 1,000 times. But here's the thing: he's using these old storytelling stuff and he's letting them run awry. Uh, and part of the fun is to take these movie characters and these genre situations and apply them to the real life rules and see how they unravel.
Yeah, I don't think
Um,
I would have like got I didn't get that at all. When
yeah,
I
well,
watched,
look, I have a
I was
close
just like,
friend.
yo, what the fuck is going on? It's just
Yeah, but
random
I
shit
have
happening.
two close friends who love that movie and also don't really know about this stuff. So it's like, well, what? I have three actually. Now that I think about it, three, four,
Yeah.
and I don't know how
Well,
much they're aware of.
that goes into like the idea of killing the author. And we will save that for we'll talk about that in another episode of like,
What? And because yeah,
does
this
author's
is
intent matter at
because
all?
right. Well, Pulp Fiction also I think is more of a search for the goat episode, not
Yeah,
a.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's relevant just because that's also another divide that I want to talk about, and hopefully in this episode is the weird lines between the pulp genres, and some are taken more seriously than others.
Mhm.
Crime is taken more seriously than sci-fi, and romance is taken more seriously than fantasy.
Well, yeah. All right. So let's just get into like the pulp shit.
Oh yeah, what is it?
Yeah. So
It's
yeah, go ahead. My bad.
well, what do you think it is? I think you're more new to this, so
So what I'm getting from this is it's kind of what we think of like pop music, right, is like an accumulation. All right, so it got the name pulp because it was printed on pulp paper, right? It was this really cheap paper, and because it was so cheap to print on this paper, basically, it allowed for anyone to basically write stories and get them published without worrying about, publishing companies and all this shit. So like the idea behind these stories was entertainment rather than like enrichment, It was just pass the time.
Past
Um,
fucking time.
right. It cost 10 cents, you pick it up, and then you read these stories, which like because it was so cheap, it allowed and because it was for just entertainment, it allowed the stories to be like as wild as you can make them, because the incentive is just entertainment, right?
Right.
So like I guess that kind of like sparked like the the loss of like constrictions, I guess, sort like realism and stuff like that, allowed for more like fantastical elements to start like arising. So then you got like detective stories coming out of this. You got like adventure stories where they would explore either different parts of the world, uh, with very like racist depictions and shit. But it was all for
Yeah.
the sense like, all right, we'll talk about the shady shit that went
Well,
down with
well,
the Pulp.
yeah, because that's its own. Because again, the way this podcast is gonna be structured is each episode will be devoted to,
Like a certain topic.
yeah, a genre, like a subtype of that.
Right.
And again, classic adventure stories
Yeah.
is one of them, absolutely. Because even I don't really know much about those stories. I've done a little research into them. Because those, again, just here's an interesting factoid. Those
But like,
stories, what?
my bad. It was just like these like classic adventure stories evolved into
Into
the
what?
stories we have today, right? So it would be like,
Yeah, a lot of the tropes. Yeah.
yeah, so like it's hard to find like adventure stories today, like the ones I think of. I mean, the adventure stories are like my favorite ones. So right off the bat, you have like I think of One Piece, you know what I mean? Like where the whole like the main theme of the story is exploring the world and having an adventure.
Right.
Um and sorry for cutting you off.
No, that's my point. I was going to say something like that.
It was just
It's
like, yeah, like these little pulp stories, they branched into the movies we kind of have today. So like the detective stories that turned into
what's
like film noir, right?
which
And
turn into modern
turned
crime
into like,
fiction.
yeah, and like thrillers and
Thriller,
suspense kind
exactly.
of movies like that. You got like the romance movies.
Right.
I
Rom coms.
Yeah, I'm not sure like how much yet,
I
but I know for sure like soap operas and stuff like that. And you could even say like the the scripted romance in reality television, like
Oh,
on
reality
and
TV
off.
is it's fiction. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
form of you're getting the same thing. Same with true crime. True crime is
Mhm.
film noir.
Yeah, and like the drama they play, it
Yeah,
almost dates back to the stories, like the romance stories they had
exactly.
back in these
Yes.
pulp stories. And then of course you got like the sci-fi really like came out of this.
Sci-fi is probably the biggest. When I think pulp, I think sci-fi.
Yeah, and there's a reason for it. It
Right.
was because one of these stories, one of these magazine brands, Astounding Stories, they had this dude,
John W. Campbell.
John W. Campbell, and that was the hero's journey guy, right? No,
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 see, but
different. I already
different
like
dude.
I
No, it's
knew
a
it was gonna be
weird. Yeah, because I thought Joseph Campbell too. That's important too because Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, which a lot of these stories follow. But that's a different topic entirely. But
Mhm.
yes, John W. Campbell.
Yeah. So that dude started hiring sci-fi authors that had like kind of legit science backgrounds, right? So that included Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, and these dudes were kind of like laid the groundwork for science fiction, you know? You got people like Lovecraft that came out of this too, H.G.
Oh,
Wells.
Lovecraft is very much. Well,
Yeah,
H.G. Wells is a little older than the pulp stuff, but
yeah.
his stuff would be reprinted in the pulp stuff for
Yeah,
sure.
this like so this is like the next
Yeah, absolutely.
version into pulp where you're starting to get like more realistic science, right? But it's still
Yes.
fantastical. It's still like
Yeah, which is
taking place in
weird
this
because
space.
there's this I've done the research into like the 40s pulp stuff that was supposedly scientifically accurate. It's fucking not. It's it sorry, it's like you read the concepts for them and it's like this is so clearly not grounded.
Oh man, you're shattering my dreams. Well, what were some of them that
The
people
one I
should know?
like there was like here's Ara Hyland's first story was let me look it up. Robert it's called Lifeline.
Mm.
Robert Heinlein was the first story ever sold to one of these magazines. Lifeline. I mean, look, it's worth the read just because again, this is where sci-fi comes from. If you love sci-fi, you should get into you should look this
We're
stuff up.
definitely gonna have a day where we just talk about like retro sci-fi.
Absolutely,
And
that's another one.
yeah.
Retro sci because that's its own thing. Retro sci-fi.
Mhm.
Just writing this down for our future episodes, but yeah, Lifeline. Here's the concept really quickly. Protagonist Professor Pinero builds a machine that will predict how long a person will live. It does this by sending a signal on the world line of a person and detecting the echo from the far end. Uh, Professor Pinero's invention is a powerful effect on the life insurance industry as well as his own life. Like it's like that is classic sci-fi because it's about. I was actually explaining this to another friend last night. Uh, it does involve it's the idea of science being a character in the story in a way.
Yeah.
So that is sci-fi,
You know
but
what it reminds me of?
what?
Like the conspiracy theorist idea of like microchips. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah,
Where it's
yeah.
like the science behind it, there is none, but it's just
Right.
like microchips. And so like this guy, he said, your echo, I guess once it goes around the world and it hits you, like that's how long it takes before you die.
I haven't read the fucking.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds just like some like, oh yeah, microchips, like type sci-fi. It is
Right.
sci-fi in a way.
It
We
is.
like
It's just.
conspiracy theories do come into this.
It's just not the thing where it's like we're using actual science and we're basing a story because those stories do it like Ex Machina. I was just gonna talk recent movies.
Mhm.
That is like that to me. That's like classic hard sci-fi because that is probably actual science that's being discussed in that movie. And it's about that. It's about, oh shit, here's where computers can go. Here's where AI can go.
Right. Well, you got
Um,
like 2001 Space Odyssey,
I just
right?
watched that last night. Yeah.
You
But
like
that's what no, I had to tell him the difference. He said, this is not really sci-fi, there's no lasers. And it's like, well, all right, hold on. I mean, like I had to tell him the rant where it's like, well, lasers doesn't define sci-fi. Sci-fi is where it's science is the main character.
well, so this would also be like the split between hard sci-fi
And
and I
soft
guess soft
sci-fi
sci-fi,
because
right?
Blade Runner
So
is soft sci-fi. Even then, it's like, oh, here, you know how you make Blade Runner a hard sci-fi or a hard quote unquote sci-fi is if we're following the creation of the replicants. If that's the story, it's
mm,
sci-fi. But
so
we're following,
if they
yeah.
explain it, then it's hard
And
sci-fi.
if that's where the fun of the story is in the making of these replicants,
Ah,
but it's not. It's a detective crime story in a way.
So they always include like Asimov in like hard sci-fi.
And some of his stuff is, some of it isn't. Like Foundation. Yeah, I guess it kind of is. Yeah, it's because you're following. Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
guess because it like the whole thing is more about the concept of
psychohistory. Yeah.
this, yeah, than the actual story itself, right?
Yeah, no, the characters are. I that's one of the two sci-fi books I have read in full. Um, and yeah,
Well,
it
yeah, I
is.
guess
Yeah,
Ex Machina like would be more about the technology
it is,
than the
and
story.
the characters are fucking great. That's a great. It's a three
Right.
character chamber piece, basically. Of a that could be a play. That's how
Right.
tiny it is. But again, the characters are great. I mean, it does follow. If you want to talk other pulp stuff, it's a horror movie in a way. It's very Frankenstein-y, Mary Shelley, which I haven't really gotten into myself. But it's Frankenstein.
It
It's
is, yeah.
gothic. Yeah,
Androids. AIs are
it's
the new Frankenstein.
well, and that's what it was playing on. It's also film noir in a way. You have this clueless dude who doesn't really know who to trust. And it's just a great story. And it's again that actually I didn't mention it on the on the search for the goat, but that is actually one of my favorite movies of all time. It's just such a it's like a perfect movie in some sense. But
I'm gonna watch it.
that
I haven't watched it.
watch it because it's hard sci-fi. What's not hard sci-fi is a lot of this stuff from the 40s where it's like, well, I don't want to have the aliens would show up a lot. And it's like, yeah, but that's not real science. It's like
Right.
what?
Well, it would be
I
like Star Wars, where I not even Star Wars, but anything where like the science is just in the background, right? Where the tech is just part of the environment. It's not the
that's
focus of,
soft sci-fi, if not
yeah,
even softer.
right.
Like soft sci, like Blade Runner is like the classic soft sci-fi, like Alien. Like I got excited. I'm referencing movies because I just know them the most. I got my sci-fi through the movies. I never picked up a fucking sci-fi book or whatever. It was always movies. And yeah, Alien and Blade Runner. That's a classic example of soft sci-fi. Ray Bradbury. No, well, Ray Bradbury. I did read. I read.
Right.
Fucking.
All the dystopian stuff. All right,
That
we'll talk about all the
that's
dystopian
another because that is because
yeah,
here's the
when we
funny
talk
thing.
about the cyberpunk versus
Well, not only that, cyberpunk is still an episode, but here's the thing: dystopian sci-fi.
yeah,
There's a few of them, and all of them are held up to the class of literature that Asimov and Philip K. Dick will never be held up as.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
Orwell, 1984 is sci-fi, but it's not. But it
Mhm.
again, that's its own episode because Brave New
And
World is that
yeah, it's a
too.
bunch of them, right? Brave New World, you got Fahrenheit 451, right?
Yeah, you could, I guess, Lord of the Flies.
The Giver, was it the
Well,
Giver?
Giver's children's fiction, so it
Right, yeah.
isn't.
I'm thinking of something else. It's
Well, that's also its own because that's children's sci-fi. Because that's its own fucking thing.
okay, okay. Yeah.
Because I did read
So
that
we are
book and
thinking
I
the same
quite
thing.
liked it. Yeah, I did quite like that book.
Okay.
Yeah, these are books you pick up when you are like in. It's actually there's a specific term for that. It's called middle grade fiction,
Mhm.
and it's relevant because I feel like a lot of the pulp movies made today, aka the Marvel movies, and all the stuff we love, it's also written for middle grade. Like they kind of
Yeah.
they have the same sort of mindset, I think, in a way.
Well, tying this all back into like the superhero Marvel
Because
stuff.
it's dominated the movies,
Right.
and it's just is that a bad or a good thing? Or is
Yeah.
it is like what's the
Well,
deal?
like these pulp magazines,
Or
right?
the predecessor,
They evolved into like
Marvel
the beginnings of the
Comics,
comics. Yep. And
which
that
became the movies.
exactly.
That's why
And
we're doing the podcast.
now we're here today, yep, with basically like we were talking about how Marvel movies, they kind of all seem like the same movie, right? Seems like
It's
one
starting
movie.
to, man. After Endgame, it's really like that's it's basically we might as well call this if we had a more academic title, it might as well be the merits of pulp stuff. The merits
Right.
Like, is it? I don't know. Is it worthy of being where it is today? Where it's like,
I mean, but it all goes
you
back
know,
to like the main starting point of all this, which was entertainment rather than
right,
enrichment, right?
right,
This was just
exactly.
here to, and it goes like the topic. I forgot which director said, but it was like Marvel movies aren't
Scorsese.
real. Yeah.
It's not real cinema. It's not. It's not cinema.
Well, yeah, but exactly, it's not
Is it?
cinema.
That is a big reason why this podcast is a thing, because that is like, I think that is the first. I mean, the guy who did Exorcist, and what's the French connection? William Frederick. I don't know how to say the fucking name. Frederick and I don't know how to say this. I'm sorry, whoever who does this director. Sure,
Right.
well, yeah, I like French Connection, and that's also a crime
Yeah.
story. That's a horror movie. So they're
Well,
both genre things, but
but yeah, and I guess the question is like, if from the beginning this stuff was just meant for entertainment, this was not, we weren't supposed to get like lessons out of the Spider-Man movies, right?
we are, and I think we are.
But
That's
we
and
are, and it's
yeah,
like, should we get mad at these movies for not being
yes.
deeper than what they are if all this stuff was just supposed to be entertainment in the
And
first place?
are they deep or not? Are they deep? Because I do think they are. I do think a lot of these movies are
Yeah.
deep.
But I think what's happening is they're falling short when they're trying to be deep. Because at the end of the day, this is
Wow,
a
right.
Disney superhero movie made for literally the entire world, right? So you can't really have controversial opinions, especially like
Right.
after what we've seen like in China and shit, with the whole
Well,
Mulan
it's
movie,
the what movie?
Mulan, like
Oh, well, yeah, yeah,
that
basically.
coming out and stuff. So like when you're like a massive media conglomerate, and it's Disney is kind of perfect, right? That it is Disney that owns Marvel. Because, like, if you think about these Marvel movies, it's like Disney worlds, right? You're there for entertainment, you're there for the ride, you're there to see fucking the
Right.
explosions and
Are they there? Can Disney World be more though? That's the question. Can Marvel movies be more? Are they more? I
is
just
it
kind of
Disney
feel
World?
like,
It's like you have this theme park that everyone from all over the world is coming because they're here for, what you're advertising, entertainment.
right. Fuck. Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's
Because like
that's
if this goes into like, there is a trend that, yeah, superhero movies are like, it's formulaic, blah blah blah. But at the same time, what's happening is there are these like deep superhero like takes that are coming out, right? Like The Boys, and
well, I
even going back to Watchmen.
don't. Yeah, don't. Well, Watchmen. Yeah, that was a response in the '85 to the superhero show. That's its own. That's its own episode. Is that's Alan Moore and Watchmen is its own little fucking episode for sure. Um, because he is an example of someone who takes the pulp stuff and is trying to be literary and deep about it.
He did
Um,
that for a reason, right? It's like when people complain about pop music being like super generic, where it's like, yeah,
right,
it's generic because it's pop music, right? That's
right.
like the genre you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, but again, it's just basically, is there merit? I mean, I've said might have said this for the third time, but is there merit? Is there deep stuff within the pop stuff, or is it just inherently not deep? Like, let's put it this way. Like I've been watching this movie a lot. Like I've been watching the Spider-Man movies a lot this week, just clips and just reading about it. Does that have as much merit as a story as Citizen Kane or Florence of Arabia? Like, is there
I
as much
mean, like,
depth
yeah,
in?
but
I
you
would kind of
like
say, yeah, a little bit.
you would
I kind of
like
would.
I'd say it's ultimately like really hard to
I'm talking the Raimi movies, by the way, the old ones.
which okay.
The Rick,
I
yeah,
mean still I'd say it's really hard to push for entertainment like what you expect from Spider-Man, right? You
right.
expect comic book Spider-Man doing superhero shit. Um, and if you're trying to get like anything deeper than like standard superhero problems, like,
Like
and the
what?
thing is, like, when it's done well, right? Like Logan, like
Right.
all the stuff I mentioned before, it's all done well. I mean, but there's a reason, right? It's like, oh, we're doing this to subvert your expectations or whatever of what you think of a standard superhero movie, right?
Mhm.
But I'm asking, like, should we judge the standard, which I guess in this case is Marvel and DC,
Just standing on what?
on how, I guess, deep it is, or like how
Well,
fucking,
is I guess the question is it an unfair standard to have for these movies to say,
yeah,
oh, you're not deep though?
right.
I don't I gonna even the Avengers movies, I do think they have. It's weird to say. I do think they have as much depth as any classic work of cinema. I think maybe the revelations that are being revealed in the story aren't as deep, but I would, and that's all right. And that's my argument. That's been my argument for the movies, regardless, is that to me they're mythology. I
Yeah.
think they
I
are
mean,
worthy.
I'm
Yeah,
not saying there aren't deep themes in like Marvel movies, right? Like the whole Civil War thing was all about like, this deep question of like whether you should give up your freedom um
well, it's
in order
how
to
do
be
you, yeah,
accountable. But so that it's not,
how
I'm
do
not
we
saying
use
like,
power?
yeah, I'm not
That's
saying
it.
like only like idiots go and watch these movies, you know
Right,
what I mean?
right.
But yeah, at the end of the day, that did just get resolved in like, oh, there's a bad guy. He did everything. Take it out on him.
Yeah, well, then
Which is
that's
like,
kind of, yeah, it's
yeah.
true.
And it's like, for a fucking Marvel movie, that's like, it's a good enough
I get,
ending.
would that same complaint hold up with like Homer's Iliad or whatever, or Virgil's Aeneid, or Paradise Lost or whatever,
I
or any
mean,
of the Christian mythology,
for
where
that,
it's
I would say like the reason why those stories are good is because it's old, right? It's because it's the first. It's because it's
are you
like the one.
sure? Or is what is you think so?
Like what? How do we? If we don't have other stories that come from the same time, how do we know what's good or not?
We do
You know
though,
what I
for
mean?
sure. We have a lot of, we have the Gnostic stuff, we have the other pagan stuff, we have the Egyptian stuff, we have a bunch of shit.
But that's
It's
not
just,
as old as the Odyssey, is it?
yeah, it's about, yeah, Egyptian mythology. That civilization dates back to 2,000 years. Like it's they went around. Sumerians were around 3,000 BC. It's
Right.
Egypt's 2,000 BC, but their mythology didn't survive until now. But for some reason, when you say, yeah, there's a dude who died on the cross for you because he loves you and he cares about you and he wants you to be better, that hits people,
Right. And is
in
that
a
different
very
than
deep way.
Spider-Man fucking
Is it that? I don't
holds
think
up
it
the train
is.
for you? Yeah.
I don't think it's the same shit to me. And that's where Joseph Campbell comes in because that was his idea,
Mhm.
sort of. That's where George Lucas kind of ran with that with Star Wars. Was let's take these classic myths and bring them to modern times. And that's what Tolkien ran with too. He wanted to, because I'll say for Lord of the Rings to me is the ultimate heroic story, the heroic fantasy. It's
Yeah.
the best of the best for me.
Well, would you say it's easier to compare like Lord of the Rings to like the Marvel or DC universe than it is, I don't know, like Gilgamesh? Like
No, I
maybe
think it's
it's
the same.
something
There to
to
me, to what?
Actually,
Because I
nah,
put them all three in the same category
nah,
to
yeah,
some
yeah.
extent.
I think you're
Especially the
right.
new
Like,
Marvel movies from
especially if you think
2000. Yeah,
about like comics being an amalgamation of different authors, like stories.
of the same character. There's like 50
Yeah,
different versions of Batman.
right, right. And then the ones that are the best are the ones that stick out, right? Like, and
Right.
kind of define
And then
who
they get
Batman
retold.
is going
Right.
forward too.
Right. Like you like Batman. I don't say I just mentioned because I know the most about him. He's the favorite, I guess. And he is probably the most written about superhero
Is
for whatever
Batman our
reasons.
Jesus?
Well, the Nolan movies made him into Jesus. Usually he's not.
That was
He's
Superman, right?
well, Superman, they turned him into Jesus with Zack Snyder. But the Nolan movies, he's Jesus Christ,
Mhm.
Batman. He doesn't that idea of like I mean it's sort of in the comics a little, but the idea of him really being the savior character is that's a Nolan and David Goyer idea. Was let's make him fucking I want to be a symbol to the people of Gotham, be better. That's Jesus. That's like cross shit.
Would you find this going all the way back to the Pulp magazine stuff, like this departure, would you see like, yeah, I guess you wouldn't see like Jesus allegories and
And
stuff
I
in these.
I don't know. I don't think so though. I think the idea of mixing yeah, that's again where when did the
Well,
pulp stuff
weirdly, like Dianetics, right?
when L. Ron
Scientology
Hubbard?
came out of these magazines.
Well, yeah, and if you know anything about Scientology, I know a little bit about it, and it's like, yeah, it's a fucking. Oh, here's a fun story just mentioned. Me and you and our mutual friend
No,
Raj.
no, don't talk about. I don't want these Scientologists coming after me, bro.
But we do have a little experience, and that's just funny to mention.
Yeah.
But we never talk about that story, but it happened. Um, that was a real thing. But if you know anything about Scientology, it's a sci-fi story. And it's a cool one too. It's like wow, it's pretty interesting. But it's sci-fi. It's not it's. But anyway, yeah. So L. Ron Hubbard. I would say Lucas and Tolkien. Probably Lucas, especially, probably one of Tolkien, because Tolkien in his head, he was just doing mythology. He wasn't really doing fan. Like, even Peter Jackson, I was listening to an interview on him on Charlie Rose and 20 years ago, and he said that like he said, yeah, in my mind, Tolkien was not sitting down to write a fantasy story like a pulp, because that
Yeah.
fantasy was a pulp thing. And
It
there are
was
pulp
the
fantasy authors.
adventure, the adventure stories.
Nope, he was sitting down to write something in the same ballpark as like the Aeneid or like the Norse sagas were more of his thing, Norse stuff.
It's kind of a combination of both, if you think about it.
Of what?
Because the Iliad and the Odyssey, Tolkien's Lord of the Rings.
Oh, it's
Because you have
war and
the
journey.
yeah, you
Yeah,
have the journey story, and then you have the big epic war story.
right. Yeah, a lot of pulp stuff too. Yeah, I never thought of that before. Most pulp stuff, you're mixing both Iliad and the Odyssey. I never thought about that before. Yeah, wow, that's interesting. But yeah, it's basically. Yeah, a lot of those again, all those like the Homer stuff, the Bible stuff. These are archetypes that keep showing up in our modern pulp stuff. But yeah, I don't know if they date to pre George Lucas, because George Lucas, yeah, he came along and he was reading both Joseph Campbell and Flash Gordon. And yeah, so you before the podcast, you said Flash Gordon. You said, "Who the
Yeah,
fuck's
yeah.
that?"
It was Flash Gordon. Is that the
Uh
Flash? Is
he's
that
not the Flash. Flash Gordon. Let's go to Wikipedia because he is like when you say pulp stuff, he's sort of who you think of, I think. Um,
was that the fucking bully in Spider-Man?
no, that's Flash Thompson, not
Okay.
Flash Gordon. Um, yeah, it's just this dude. He's a handsome dude. One day he gets he it's pretty dumb. I'll just read it as is. Comic should follows the adventures of Flash Gordon, a handsome polo player in Yale University. Because he has to be handsome, of course. his companion's Dale, which is interesting because Peter Park comes along. He's not supposed to be handsome. He's supposed to be just
Right.
like you.
Supposed
But
to
no,
be
Flash
dumb.
Gordon's better than you. So he's handsome. And his companions, Dale Art and Dr. Hans Zarkov. Uh, the story begins with Earth being threatened by a collision with the planet Mongo. Dr. Zarkov invents a rocket ship to fly into space in an attempt to stop a disaster. Half Maddie kidnaps Flash and Dale. They land on the planet Mongo and halt the collision and come into conflict with Ming the Merciless. And here's what's interesting, because for many years they remain on
Wait,
the planet.
so that's
It's fucking
Superman.
One Piece. Well, it's Superman. It's One Piece.
So he goes to the other planet, right?
Well, it's a
And has
reverse
to
Superman
but
because
yeah,
Superman
so
comes to our Earth, and here he
right,
goes to
right.
another world.
But it is just Superman's perspective, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, exactly. It's I'm a hero. I'm a dude on this new world. Let's have some fun.
Does he have
And,
superpowers?
not to my knowledge. He's
Okay,
just a
so he's just
dude.
a dude having fun.
Just a dude. Yeah, for many years. For many years. So they're on this planet for how but yeah, for many
He's
years.
just chilling. He comes back to
Yeah.
Earth. I'm assuming he's just a vacation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they actually did. That's the next paragraph. They come back to Earth and then go. Yeah, for many years, the two companions have adventures on Mongo, traveling in the forests of Arborea.
So Earth
Uh,
crashed into
well,
Mongo,
it's about to, and they save it to avert
like
disaster. Yeah, they
going
halt
into
the
the
collision.
planet.
Yeah, so the Earth is saved, but they're fucking
They
stuck
should
here.
bring this back, dude. I don't know
No, they
why.
are. The guy. Oh, here's what, because they
I was
are.
just being sarcastic, man.
No, they're bringing back. Well, they're gonna try to bring back the other because there's Flash Gordon and there's Buck Rogers, and right now
There's what?
there's another dude, Buck Rogers. It's the same fucking thing,
Okay.
from to my knowledge. And the comic book writer Brian Vaughan, if you Google comic book writers, he's usually considered one of the best, like Alan Moore level good. He's considered, and he's writing the movie for the fucking Buck Rogers. So yeah, they're trying to bring back this pulp stuff because it's like, yeah, it's fucking, it's not that different from Marvel. It's the same, you know.
Right, right.
And yeah, so Flash Gordon is like the predominant or the dominant pulp thing that went in the Star Wars, and now all our movies are Flash Gordon. Is that wrong or right, or is it whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I guess is it if
Like I said the same thing about Indiana Jones. I was because you mentioned Raging Bull, and I was like, well, it's so cool because it's not. It's. I mean, you still can make movies like that now a little bit, but for the most part, it's like it feels like all of our big movies are just this escapist, fun shit. There's not
Raging
much.
Bull?
Well, I forget how I mentioned it, but you brought up. You said I watched Raging Bull, and we're talking about it, and it's like, yeah, it's interesting because it's a movie that's not. It's like it's more to movies than just Flash Gordon. And if you look at the box office today, you look at the top 10 of the past few years, it feels like every movie is Flash Gordon.
Well, every movie is just a remake, right? So far.
I mean, yeah, look at the fucking. Let's go to 2015 top
Like,
grossing
what was the
movies.
last like original, like not based off an old IP movie?
Uh,
That's not like an Oscar movie or whatever.
well, Chris Nolan's movies, it's kind of his thing,
Tenet,
Avatar.
yeah, Tenet.
Yeah, okay, here's 2015. The Force Awakens, Jurassic World, Furious 7, Avengers, Minions, Spectre, Inside Out, Rogue Nation, Mission Possible, Hungry, The Martian. That's actually a good example. Okay,
Oh,
and
the
that's
Martian.
that. Even
And
that was
that's
based off a
based
book.
off a book.
That's
Yeah,
based off a book.
exactly. So,
Let's go to 1955 box office
okay.
and film. Um, 1 second.
But the
19.
thing is, like, will we know the shit they're based off of?
You can just do a quick look. So
Okay.
here we go. So cop versus movie. One is a documentary. That's number one. Cinema Holiday. Mr. Roberts is number two. World War II movie.
Okay.
Battle Cry. World War II movie. Oklahoma, based off the musical. Guns and Dolls musical. Lady and the Tramp, Walt Disney. Picnic, rom-com, romantic comedy drama based off of a play.
Okay.
Not as a Stranger, film noir drama with Frank Sinatra based off a novel. Then there's a three-way tie between a World War II movie, rom-com based off a play, and another World War II movie.
How far after World War II is this?
This is 10 years. This is like you making a movie about fucking. Even Iraq would be too old
I
to
know.
do.
Yeah.
Even that's 20 years ago. Yeah, this is like making a movie about like
Sandy Hook or some shit.
Well, yeah, it's just, it's adapting recent history, I guess.
Right.
Well, I was thinking this too. We're almost. It's weird. How are we not out of time yet? I guess we probably are almost out of time. We haven't gotten that signal yet. And I was thinking today, I wonder if the pulp stuff is so big now because we as a culture don't want to deal with ourselves. So we want to escape constantly. We don't want to.
I mean, like, yeah, we can't go for war propaganda like we used to.
Well, there's that. Was that propaganda? That's a great fucking point.
Yeah. Because this isn't like one of the glorious wars, you know what I mean?
No, because that's, and I will say this too. World War II probably that has a huge impact on how we see the world today, like good and evil. No, it's Wikipedia. If you look up good and evil on Wikipedia, it literally says that we see that's a common theme since World War II because of World War II, because that was like we're fighting this ultimate evil that is Hitler.
Right.
That wasn't a thing before.
Good war, right?
Yeah, it's a just war. And that's a term that goes back to Augustine in the fucking fourth, and that's an old philosopher from Christian philosopher. And if you notice in the comic book movies, especially the more warlike movies like fucking Marvel, they're always fighting just war against fucking Thanos, against Ultron, against Loki. It's a just war.
Even when it was supposed to be against like Arab terrorists, it was flipped, right?
Oh, Iron Man, with Obadiah Stane.
Yeah, in the second movie.
Iron Man. Well, that's the first Iron Man you're thinking of.
Well, the first and the second, right? Because it was supposed to be this terrorist organization.
So that's the third one. Then the 10 Rings.
Right. Yeah.
Which are coming back for one of the new movies, Shang-Chi. That's besides the point. So it's comic books are all about the just war.
Right.
You know, it's okay for us to kill these people because they're bad. Because it's just
aliens.
Because they're alien. So yeah, so that's kind of, so I guess that comic book mythology and real mythology have always kind of been intertwined, I guess. I haven't done much research into Jack Kirby, but I was reading a little bit about the New Gods that he did for DC. And one of the characters in that is one's based on tyranny, dark side, and the other is based on the idea of a just war. So even he was probably a big propagator of mythology in comics, I think. So he's actually, I don't know much because he is probably a figure worthy of study, like Alan Moore and Tolkien is in this stuff. What's it called? But yeah, so I feel how are we not at it? When did we start this? This is surprising.
Yeah, right. It still says recording.
That's so weird. When did we? Well, because I guess that's sort of it for today's episode. Is like we basically just want to investigate,
Just
like,
Pulp,
huh?
right? The origins of kind of our pop culture movies right now.
Right, and their merits, because we're so the next episode, which hopefully we do right after this, is Marvel. It's gonna be, and I think I don't know if it's just gonna be Marvel or we're gonna just do the MCU, but we're gonna talk about the merits of them. Like, do we like them? That sort of thing. We didn't talk about the pulp stuff we liked. I guess that could be its own episode. I guess with pulp stuff that we like already, but that might not even be necessary. That just might come out with each topic, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely like I'm gonna like look more into some of these pulp stories. Because it's playing into just like some of the other shit I'm doing. Um,
Which is what?
just some of the art stuff I'm doing. I showed you like one of the posters I was working on.
Right.
Yeah, like I've been trying to like collage different pulp magazine covers together. Um, but yeah, it's been fun.
Well, there you go. So this is a little relevant to you, I guess.
But yeah, we definitely should talk about for sure some of these uh, topics in pulp. I guess pulp sci-fi. Like I know we want to talk about like retro sci-fi versus like
Because
the
there is,
sci-fi we see today.
yeah, and because there is also a difference between pulp sci-fi and Asimov sci-fi.
Right.
Because the Asimov and Heinlein and Clark are a response to the pulp sci-fi of the 30s, where it's like, this is so fucking silly and has no grounding in actual science. Let's
Mhm.
ground it in science.
Right. Yeah. And
Um,
then like from that jumped on to the movies. So no matter what, it'll always like you'll always have to go back to compare these things to what it started, or at least
yeah,
it's
I mean, yeah.
fun to do it.
Well, people go to school for this. This study is called comparative literature. That's an actual,
Nerd.
like, people have
We're
degrees in
doing this
that.
shit for free,
We are
okay?
doing this stuff for
Listen to
free.
us. You don't have to go to college.
Oh, I mean, but it's not. This isn't like. I wonder what we call this. Yeah, it's called comparative literature. We're just doing it with fucking pulp stuff versus like. No, it's fine. I made this joke before, and you give me a laughing emoji on Facebook, but we never got into like the wine snob world, the wine snob literature world, because that is its own world
Yeah.
where it's like, all right, let's read Hemingway and let's read Charles, Charles Dickens and
I was gonna say Darwin.
Darwin. Let's James Joyce and Virginia Woolf, and that's literature.
They're
Kind
all
of like
made.
how we with cinema, yeah, literature. It's a
They're all
great
made.
work of literature.
It's all made up. It's all made up by the SAT board.
But no, because Pulp Fiction is the exact opposite of that, and it's just funny to see that same conflict replicated in movies these days, where
Yeah.
it's like,
Well,
oh, it's not real cinema.
goes back to the idea of making shit for the masses, where
Right.
it's just supposed to be Disney World, supposed to be
Yeah,
fun.
our whole cinema landscape, the whole place where we consume fiction is now Disney World. Is that good or bad? And is that true? I guess we're assuming it's true, but is it? I mean, I guess it is. I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's
We'll
why we're
have
doing
to
the podcast.
rewind this whole shit to find the answer. I'm sure we answered it somewhere in this.
Well, the whole I this is a pretty good quote that I came up with. The whole reason we're doing the podcast is because we don't know the answer. Because if we knew the answer, we would need to do a podcast about it. There'd be no need for a podcast. So here it is. And on that note, I guess that's it.
Take care.
See you next time.